Welcome to the Artist Appeals. I'm your host, Erin Sparler, and today I'm excited to share with you an interview with Benjamin Hummel. Benjamin is a artist and a storybook illustrator and a chalk artist. He's also an educator, and today he gives us some really great tips and tricks for organizing your work in a manual way, not digitally, and a lot of good advice. Please welcome Benjamin Hummel. Benjamin, who are you and what do you do?
Well, I am Benjamin Hummel, and honestly, think I'm still trying to figure out what I do, and I think it's probably the answer for a lot of artists.
No doubt.
Uh,
I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with my life when I grow up.
it's been as broad as it has ranged from being a street artist, chalk artist, to being a graphic designer, being
I saw that in your tagline that you do chalk art at events. That's so cool.
yeah, absolutely. A lot more in the past when I was younger and more fit, but yeah, I've done a lot of chalk art, a lot of street art, gone all over the world to do it.
Really? Do you do
Mhm.
those ones that are like super realistic where you're walking along and you think you're going to you walk up and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to fall in a hole?
Yeah, we've done a few of those. Yeah. Yeah. People of the Chalk, if anybody is interested, peopleofthechalk.com, if anybody is interested. And I've done some fine art and some illustration. And right now I am an instructor at Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design.
In Colorado, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful location. I love the Rocky Mountains. Do you ski?
I do not ski. I've skied once in my life. And it's kind of funny. It's like, it's one of those things where people come to our state to ski, and
Right.
a lot of people will go maybe to the coast to surf, but maybe some people actually live there the whole life, has never done those things. And
Right, that's the way it works.
yeah,
Well, I'm into skiing. So I see in the background you've got a big old P there with some is that detail work around it?
yeah, it's just it's yeah, it's just
Can I
texture
see?
that yeah.
Show us, show us. So I've
So
seen some of your other work. It's really beautiful. Oh, that's a big piece.
hmm
Ooh.
so I teach typography at
Okay.
Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design, and one of our projects is to hand draw letters.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will give them a letter from with a very specific font, and then they have to recreate it by hand without using any rulers or compasses or anything else like that.
Very
So
cool.
I always do a demo. So this one turned out. So that's kind of where that came from.
I like it. So you teach topography there too.
I do.
What all classes do you teach?
I'm primarily known for teaching perspective. I've taught perspective there for a long, long time. And obviously perspective comes into play when you're doing those 3D chalk art illusions.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand perspective very, very well. And I'm actually writing a book on perspective drawing right now.
Very cool.
So that's my main class.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've also taught things like illustrating literature, which is a lot of fun.
Illustrating
Typographic
literature. So like covers for books.
covers or interiors or sequential art. We cover the gamut.
Oh, cool. Sequential art would be like cartoons, right? Or
Like, yeah, like cartoons or
graphic
children's books,
novels.
graphic novels, comics. Yeah.
Cool. Your work is really beautiful. Do you have more examples you want to share with us? I see some stuff back there on the table.
Yeah. So
This is the cool part of video. We get to see stuff. Show us, show us. I do love my pictures. I'm a very visual person. Your studio looks beautiful. You said you cleaned up for us.
I did. All the clutter is right there, just out of the
Right.
sideline.
Yeah, you just push it over to the side in the closet. Sweep it under the carpet.
That's
I did
right.
that too. I did that too.
Nobody needs to know the difference. All right, so so this is a piece that I'm doing for a children's book that I wrote about a
Ooh.
kid that time travels into the Wild West.
Uh-huh.
So I'm still in the process of illustrating it. So this is at the main climax of the book.
Okay. And what is that in? What medium is that?
Acrylic and colored pencil.
Okay. Do you
So
put matte medium on top of your acrylic before you work on it in color pencil, or are you doing the color pencil as an underlayment?
if I were to do matte medium, the problem is that that matte medium can get really plasticky, which is hard for the acrylic to, or for the color pencil to sip on.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I am able to put color pencil on top of acrylic is instead of white, I'll mix like a 50% gesso with
Mm-hmm.
my white. And then that gives my colors, especially my light colors, grit. And then that will hold the color pencil very, very well.
Neat. Great tip. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is when the kid just arrives into the Wild West and he runs into a cowboy and they challenge him to a game of Go Fish.
I like it.
And then
Ooh,
this,
neat one.
so I end up doing this for the title page, or not for the title page, for the copyright page. So all the copyright information sits right there.
Oh, cool. I love it. Very cool. Well, how did you come to this? How did you find your niche of being really into perspective and illustrating sequential books and covers and stuff like that? How did you find your niche? Because this is really a niche. Artists who specialize in book covers and book interiors and illustration and particularly perspective, that's a niche. How'd you find it?
Well, um, I'll start with the storytelling. And I've always been a storyteller. My first job, I worked 6 years as a puppeteer.
Oh,
Yes. So I've loved telling stories. I love writing stories. I love reading stories. That is my passion.
yeah.
So when I went into the arts, I wanted to do something that was all about storytelling. So children's books is an obvious place where that happens. And what
Hmm.
I like about children's books, especially with my health condition, is I can work at my own pace. I can work on my own, during the hours when I am feeling well. And if I was a studio artist, that's a little bit more difficult to do. I like the pace that children's books have. Uh, um, so that's kind of where that came from. And then perspective, I always felt if you wanted to create a realistic environment, you have to know perspective. And so I just started studying it. And when I started teaching, I tried to teach perspective. And um, the first time I tried to teach it, it was kind of problematic because I just downloaded a bunch of information and I scared everybody off. So
They're
over
like,
the course,
no,
right?
no.
I'm also very scientific minded. I almost went into biochem.
Really?
As yes, when I was in high school, I really considered doing that. So I'm really scientific minded. So for me, it's like perspective, science, math. I mean, it was like pretty easy for me. But then as I started teaching it, I realized most artists aren't as left-brained as I. So I had to figure out a way to parse it in
Yeah.
a manner that that
That's
could be
really
understood.
true. It can be very intimidating because you've got perspective points that are maybe off the page, and
Mhm.
multiple perspective points really makes things difficult. Um, I've never met somebody that is also kind of along the, well, I mean, I've met other people within my master's degree, but I started school as a physics major. Um, and I did take some drafting and design, but the perspective in drafting and design was always in the engineering department and I don't know why. Yeah, come to think of it, even in my graduate degree, it was all figure drawing. It was all organic. I think the closest we get to perspective is foreshortening, right?
Mhm.
So that's really cool that you teach perspective. Now, how do you incorporate that into your storytelling and your illustrative style?
Well, for the chalk art, it's obvious it's for the purpose of illusion. But
Right, right,
for storytelling, it's more you don't want bad perspective to be a distraction.
right, right.
Every once in a while, I'll do. Oh shoot! I just finished a piece, but the client already ran off with it, so I don't have it in my studio. every once in a
They
while,
came in and grabbed it and ran away.
yeah, pretty much. Every once in a while, I'll throw in some like really challenging perspective drawings into the work that I'm doing just to show off, But for the most part, I like to keep it pretty simple and just make sure that I understand what the proper perspective is. That way, like I said, if good perspective is rarely noticed because it's not distracting you. Great perspective obviously is going to be noticed. I mean, comic
Mm-hmm.
books is an example where they like to use that great exaggerated perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
regular good perspective that's correct just allows you to focus then more on the story.
So do you do an underlayment of perspective is that how you start a lot of your drawings?
Absolutely. I'll do massive grid work. Let's see if I can find one example. My computer doesn't freeze on me. I just,
Yeah, and I can allow you to share screen. Isn't this fun, guys? We can actually see stuff for the podcast. I love it. Let's see. How do I do this? Participants and make co-host. You are now my co-host. I think you can share your screen now.
all right. Let's see.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about storytelling because so many of our artists and creatives that have been on the show talk about the importance of storytelling in selling. um, that story is really what people want to buy. And maybe it's not even so much the story in the artwork. It doesn't necessarily mean that the artwork has to tell a story, although yours does, but they want to know the story of the artist, or the piece or the process. And that process of telling a story about yourself, about your inspiration, about your work, or in your work is what they love, because then they can regale other people with it. So the stronger that story is, the more retellable that story is. It seems to be a really key component that I hear over and over and over again about marketability. So this is a neat piece: Main Street Deli, Groceries and Catering. Is this a real place?
It is a real place, and I created this as a recreation for somebody who wished to um, re-envision a memory that he had for his whole family when they were first introduced to the deli
Oh,
shop owners, and it was a really important part of all of their lives. But this is the perspective grid that I did ahead of time. I do most of my perspective grids now digitally on Adobe Illustrator, just because I can
okay.
move a lot quicker. But you can see where way over here off the artboard, I have a vanishing point. I have one way over in the other direction. And then the gray box is what I end up cropping the image down to. So
Interesting. Okay.
I'm able to figure out all the perspective for everything. And I have this additional outer space so I can calculate them as I go out and then just
Right.
crop into the gray
So
box.
this is called a 2-point perspective, guys. By having a perspective all the way off to the right, that's 1 point, and then 2-point perspective, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the nice thing about working digitally is I can, craft this little light on the side of the
Mm-hmm.
building. And then there's a tool I can use in Adobe Illustrator where I can scale it to the perspective point, and I can just simply duplicate
Oh,
it from here to here.
neat. I work in Illustrator, but I have not used the perspective tool. I found it rather intimidating.
Well, and I don't use the perspective tool either because it's very limiting to
Oh,
very specific types of perspective. And so if you want to break outside of that, you still have to create your own grid. So this is my own grid that I've created.
interesting. So now what will you do with this? Like, what's the next step? You've made the perspective in Illustrator. You've got this cropped area. Will you print it out and paint on top of it? Will you continue digitally?
It really depends on the project. This one it was a commission painting. So what I ended up doing is I ended up printing out an architectural print through FedEx Kinko. So you can get a really large print like for $1 or something like that.
Wow.
And then I just pasted or then I tape that to my canvas, and then I use transfer paper to transfer all my lines down onto my canvas. And then I painted that.
Interesting. Okay, so now you're reminding me of I do love to get into process. I don't know if it interests people as much as me, but I hope it does. So we had another guest on, John, and he has some gorgeous work. I met him at a LuxCon, and he was talking about his process for doing commission work. So you're doing commission work here, and no, you're using transfer paper. He would print his out and mount it to canvas just like you, but he would do it with matte medium and then roll it with a brayer, which is a rolling, a smushy rolling, for those people that are wondering what the heck a brayer tool is. It's kind of like a roller paintbrush, but a little bit more solid. So he'd roll the bubbles out, and then he'd put matte medium over it and then just work on top and do layers and layers, and each layer would have more matte medium. But you said you use transfer paper. Is that like the old-fashioned transfer paper that I used to use in college, like where you draw over the lines and it goes through?
Yeah, it's hold on.
So guys, I'll keep talking so that there's not dead air, but here's Main Street. This is the final version of this perspective he just showed us, but now it's got people in it, and it's in color, and it's acrylic, and it's great. It's like
Yep.
a story happening. Okay, go ahead, show us that paper.
So it's got graphite on one side, and the other
Uh-huh.
side is not. It's on something thin like tissue paper or something like that, or tracing paper. And then so the canvas is on one side,
Mm-hmm.
the printouts on the other, and then I just trace on the lines of the printout, and I'll transfer those lines to my canvas.
Very cool. So now you've got this perfect perspective, this drawing that you did in Illustrator, and your lines are perfect, and now you can paint right on top of it, right? Right onto the canvas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I'll do is I'll put workable fixative. That way the transfer lines don't dissolve when I put the paint on top. I discovered that the hard way once.
Oh, workable fixative. That's the spray fixative, right?
Yep.
It
Yep.
comes
So
in a
that.
can, like an aerosol
Mhm.
can, and you spray it on. Oh, nice. Neat little trick.
Yeah.
Great. And then this is acrylic?
This is acrylic. Yep.
Wow. So how big does this piece end up being?
This is 18 by 24.
Okay, so about a foot and about a foot by 2 feet.
Yep.
Very cool. And so this is commissioned work.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, we like to talk about the art first, and I love this because we've really gotten to see some of your artwork first, and then we talk about products. So I try and keep it all organized using this acronym, APPEALS. So art, product, presentation, educating your audience, amplifying or getting bigger, licensing and contract, and then success. So we've really gotten a great visual of what you do, Benjamin. Thank you so much. And you're already talking about products. So what are some of the products you sell? I mean, obviously you're a teacher, but you're a
Mm-hmm.
working artist too. You've got People of the Chalk. So you've got a service where you go around to events and you do these chalk drawings. What else? What else do you guys do? What other revenue streams? Because this is a term that I never learned until I got into business as an artist. I never learned about revenue streams, but it's really just this idea of having income coming from different spots. You've got to have
Mm-hmm.
different products. You've got to have products that are kind of low price point, medium price point, high price point. You've already kind of hit on your service products, which is your People of the Chalk, and then you've got your commission products. What else? Like, how do you share your work with the world? And what do you tell your students about this idea of products and product ladders and revenue streams?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question.
Sorry, was that too much?
No, I just have to
Parse that.
parse it a little bit.
Okay, so well, let's start with People of the Chalk. That's
Yes.
a service.
Right.
And do you charge by the size of the drawing you're going to do? Do you charge by the event? Do you have standard drawings? Like how do people purchase a chalk drawing for an event? How does that work?
They can either pay for a 1-day event, 2-day event, or 3-day event.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a price for all three. And I try to make it so that the 2-day event is less than double a 1-day event, and a 3-day event is your best value, basically.
Right, you're given a discount. You buy
Right.
more time and get a discount.
Yep.
That makes
Yep.
complete sense.
And depending on how many days that they purchase will depend on the complexity of the chalk art, because obviously that's more time that we can devote to creating an image. So then if they only do a
Oh.
1-day event, then it really scales down, limits what I can do for them. If they do a 2-day event, then I can ramp it up a little bit. If it's a 3-day event, granted it doesn't rain, we can go,
Oh.
yeah, we can go epic.
So
So,
the drawing gets more and more detailed every day?
mhm,
Oh, so it gets people to come back and see it more.
right, yep. And so if, for example, if it's like a 1-day event, or sorry, if it's a 2-day event, compared to a 1-day event, I might be able to add more detail into the shadows. I might add more interacting critters in the environment, or just there's just more detail I can add to it. Whereas if it's just a 1-day event, it would be like a simple 1 or 2 object illusion.
Do you do the picture on the fly, or is it related to the event, or do you have standard pictures that you've done over and over again? Like, what do you
Yeah, I don't like to do the same thing twice ever.
mm,
Um, I love the creative process.
mhm.
And so most of the time we're given a theme for the event. And so we try to create something that matches the theme.
Cool.
And I have to do it ahead of time because you have to reverse engineer the perspective in order
Mm,
to get to look right from your particular vantage point. If you don't do that, it won't have the same kind of pop.
interesting. How do you do that? So
A
you have
lot
to
of
go
math.
scope the place out?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes, like, if it's remote, they'll send us photographs so we can see what
Mhm.
the area looks like, what the surface looks like. We'll ask them, we'll estimate that we'll be done at 3 o'clock, anywhere from 3 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So we'll ask them, where's the sun coming from at 3 in the afternoon? And then
Mhm.
we'll try to match the shadows in our illusion to the shadows of reality.
Oh, cool. That's crazy. Cool, I love it. So, what's your next
So then if I'm not doing that, for some reason lately I've been doing, when you go to listen to a song on YouTube, there's a little splash screen.
Yeah.
I've been doing some splash screens for independent musicians recently
Oh,
who've been recording music, and then I've just been doing some illustrations and animations for them. So
I never
that's
would have thought of that.
I hadn't either, and someone called me up like, "Yeah, I like your work, and I want it to be on my music." So I'm like, "Cool."
So it's almost like an album cover.
Yeah, a little bit digital album cover. Yep. And
Very
then
cool.
as
And then you've
far
got your
as
storybooks.
mhm. Yes, I'm definitely working on. That's a great point. I'm doing a lot of books and book publishing
Mhm.
for myself and others. Been writing some stories. I wrote a book on how to draw folds and drapery.
Mm,
Um,
cool.
yeah, that's out in the marketplace. I've also, like I said, I'm working on my perspective book. I just
What's the
finished.
name of your book on folds and fabric?
Hold on.
Yes, you got to share it with us. So, Benjamin is showing us all of his work as well as talking about it. So, he's got a company, Chalk People, where he does service chalk, chalk illustration, service chalk. I was going to say photography, but it's not photography, it's hyper realistic chalk. Then you got your story and illustration. It's a wrap. Very cool. Instructional art workbook. Oh, so you can draw right in it?
Yeah, there's a few pages in the back where I provide a little photograph, and then people can draw after they
Very
learn, of
neat.
course, how to draw folds,
Oh, neat. I want that.
and go through step by step and diagrams. And
And where do you sell that through? Did you self-publish or is it through a traditional publisher or is it a hybrid or what?
independent publisher. My wife and I are going to start self-publishing our own book, or independently publishing our own books
Mhm.
through uh, the name Cherished Solutions. And right now it's through Amazon. I've actually sold quite a bit
Mm-hmm.
up until this point just through the Amazon print on demand.
Mm-hmm.
So we have plans to expand that. I like the independent publishing because I also um, worked as a graphic designer for a number of years. And so I like the whole being able to have my hands into everything and kind of
Yeah.
decide where I want things to be and stuff like that.
Yeah. A lot of artists like to have control over their design layout. Well, I think that's really cool that you and Cherish are going to start self-publishing. Are you going to have other artists? Are you going to eventually expand to help other artists publish as well?
That's the plan. Absolutely.
Nice. Well, I know Cherish has the um, art licensing show. Are you involved with that as well?
I do a lot of work on the back end, so I help her out, answer emails, do customer service. I help her um, any kind of menial tasks that need to be done. She has me work on.
You guys have your hands in a lot of pies. How do you keep this all organized? You know, I talk to a lot of artists about organization, and we talk a lot about art licensing at the end of this program. We'll get into licensing and contracts a little bit. But, you know, we're talking about products here and what you're offering, and you're doing commission work, and you're doing illustrative work, and you're doing books and instructional workbooks, and how do you keep it all organized? Do you have some sort of system?
Well, I take juggling balls and I write a little something on each one, and every day I well,
This is the one I'm working on today, the one that you drop.
right, exactly. Oh,
The one
that's
that you drop is the one that you don't do.
right, exactly. I'm very big into list making, so every week I'll make a list of everything that has to get done for the week,
Hmm.
and then every day I make a list of everything that has to get done for that day, and then I decide what when I get going in my day what I have the energy for, and I go through my list, and I also have to decide, what is the most critical deadline as well,
Hmm.
and I balance that out, and I have a bunch of folders that kind of organize my different um, what do you,
Projects.
yeah, mind splits, I guess, because
Mind splits.
that's kind of how it feels. And so, I'll have a whole section where it's just all of my writings, and the whole section is for my commission illustration, a whole section that's I'm not doing the
That's like a
chalk art.
manila folder.
Um, Sometimes a manila folder, sometimes it's one of those multi accordion folders that kind of
Okay.
open up and have a lot of slots in it.
Oh, very cool. So you put all the stuff for one project in in either a manila folder or an accordion folder, and
Hmm.
then that is you just pull that all out.
Hmm.
Oh, that's smart. I like that. I never tried that before. That's a great tip, especially for people who are more physical. You know, I'm so digital. I've got everything digitally, but I love that. I have to try
Yeah,
that.
I'll print out emails and stuff like that. It just helps me. If I don't, it will get lost in the nethers. If I don't see something physical, oh shoot, yeah, I have to do that for that client.
Yeah, gets lost in the ether that is the internet.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, wow. Cool. I love that. Great tip. Okay, so presentation. We've talked about art. We've talked about product. Now let's talk a little bit about presentation. So, you know, presentation is so critical, and I put it after product because there's presentation of fine art where, you know, it's matted and framed and it's hung on a wall, pretty pristine white wall. There's presentation of books, there's presentation of products. How do you present your work? How do you get your work out there? And do you have any presentation tips that you want to offer?
Strangely enough, I jumped on Instagram about 4 or 5 years ago, and I've gotten a lot of work through people seeing my Instagram account.
Really?
I know it's kind of the strangest thing. I have a website and I maintain it.
Hmm.
And I used to do mailings and stuff like that. I've had to cut back because of my some of my health issues.
Right, right.
I don't actively go after work like I used to, but when I did, actually I would say pre-COVID, one of the best ways in regards to presentation is presenting yourself.
Yeah.
Actually going and meeting people, being a physical face that they have seen,
Yeah.
and have conversed with at a party, at an event, at an award ceremony, or whatever, just going out there and being there. And I would say a lot of my work has come just for being present, for
You
simply
are
showing up.
so right. That is
And
another common thread that, podcast is all about teasing those threads out of, whether you be a glass blower or an illustrator, and you summed it up right there. That is one of the biggest things that I've heard is just getting out there and networking. Um, but I think that's really interesting that Instagram has brought you some work since the pandemic. How do you network during the pandemic?
it's been social media for me, and just I try to post 2, 3 times a week
Hmm.
and talk about storytelling. I always will add a little story either about the process or sometimes I'll just add some humorous quip or something like that, and I'll just keep feeding it out there, keep feeding it out there, and every once in a while, someone will call me up, be like, "Hey, yeah, I saw your stuff on Instagram, and let's talk about what you can do."
Do they direct message you, or you said they call you? Do they go to their website and you have your phone number on your website, or you got your phone number
Yeah,
on your
well,
Instagram?
call is a broad term, but yeah, direct either a direct message or a lot of times I do have a form on my website.
Okay.
They'll fill out a form on my website.
Oh, okay. That's cool. I like that. That's a good idea. Well, that's really cool. So you have your link in like your bio, and then they can go to your website and there's a form
Mhm.
they can fill out.
Yep.
Very nice. Very nice. What are your favorite conferences to go to?
Favorite conferences?
Well, we're talking about networking and presentation, so
Yeah, gosh, it's been a while since I've gone to a couple.
I know it's been a while since anybody's gone anywhere. I guess this is
Wait,
just
we're allowed
wishful
to do
dreaming.
that?
We're allowed to be around people? Oh my God.
Um, for a while, I was part of the Colorado Independent Publishers Association, so I would go to their um, monthly meetings. There was an AIGI chapter here in Denver that they would host meetings and parties and stuff like that. We'd go to a couple of those.
AIGI stands for
Um, AIGA.
AIGA, American
It's
Graphic
yeah, graphic
Designer,
artists. Yeah,
Graphic Artists.
yeah. I don't remember off the top of my head. Yeah. Um, so I did that for a while. It's been a while since I've done that. There's local illustration groups that we join and we
Hmm.
go hang out with, and of course the big conferences like um, Surtex in New York and
For
the
art licensing,
yeah,
yes.
licensing expo. We've walked that a couple times.
That's in LA, isn't it? In Las
Vegas,
Vegas. I'm not
yeah.
LA, Las
Yeah.
Vegas. So the licensing expos in Las Vegas, Surtex in New York. Those are the big art licensing conferences.
Mhm.
But I love the little ones you're talking about. I love that, there are little local groups you can wet your feet at, or if you're feeling intimidated, or if you just want to do something monthly that doesn't cost a lot. Because
Mhm.
Surtex and the licensing expo are huge and it costs a lot of money to go, let alone exhibit.
Mhm.
So cool. All right. Well, let's talk about education because you're an educator. And I'm just scrolling down through my questions. We're not even following any of those, although we are following our format. So, you're an educator. How did you get into educating? Have you always been into that, or how did you start educating people about art?
Well, I guess probably uh, a good trait of a educator is somebody who likes to learn.
Mm,
And I've always loved to learn. I've loved the learning process. And I have a slight learning disability where I really need things broken down in order for me to grasp concepts.
yeah.
And that proved to be somewhat of an issue as I went through grade school and middle school and high school.
Mm-hmm.
I was always the top of my class, but I was also a year later than everybody. My mom put me into kindergarten a year late. I think it's because of that, having to break it down for myself in order for me to understand that I was able to do that for my students as well.
Mm,
And I love how different people learn. I love I really love when light bulbs go off.
That is a
And
great moment, isn't
oh
it?
my goodness, it's just to be there with them and to see them succeed, and then to see them succeed even me
Yeah.
is so rewarding.
And they
And
light up. They really do. When a kid like or student, adult, whatever, finds that thing that makes them light up, it really is like a moment. It's
yeah,
amazing. They really glow.
yep, absolutely. Yeah, so I've gone through, in addition to studying art, I continue to study art to stay relevant. I also study about how people learn and psychology and the learning process, and I try to integrate the two. And it's just I don't know, it's just been a passion of mine.
Yeah, I think that's great. You're absolutely right. Desire to learn and a desire to break it down are really, really important parts of educating. And have you ever noticed that, like, when you're building a course or you're trying to teach something to someone, it actually teaches you. You learn it so much more in
Hmm.
depth. It
Yep.
that process of thinking about it constantly and figuring out how you're going to organize it and what the parts are and what the supplemental materials are, it just makes it like even more ingrained.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's a
Absolutely.
great advantage to educating your audience. And how did you get into storytelling? Any tips or tricks you want to offer people about how to tell stories about their work?
About their work.
Well,
Uh,
or about in general. So you do a lot of storytelling. We were just talking about the importance of storytelling, and you're a writer, you write kids' books and you illustrate them. What kind of advice can you give people for just telling stories in general?
but probably the best advice is to read stories. I
Mm.
mean, honestly, I'm a uh, I read a lot. I love the classic stories. I love modern stories. I try to get as much as I can. And when you start to read a lot and you understand, what people relate to, I think a lot of storytelling is about relatability. If people can see themselves in what you're communicating, if they can see themselves in the characters that you've developed, then they care more about it and they want to know more about what's going to happen, and then it can grab their interest that way.
How do you make something relatable? What do you think the secret sauce to a relatable character is?
Just paying attention to everyday life, just paying attention to people, I guess. Knowing, who other people are and what makes them tick, and being inquisitive, being I like to say that artists are really visual detectives. Storytellers, I guess, are kind of along that same line.
I agree. I think that's the $1,000,000 question is how do you make something relatable? I've been thinking a lot. I'm reading a book called Ninth Street Women, the Ninth Street artists, women artists. Have you heard of it?
No.
Oh, it's a big, thick book about this thick, and it's about um, Elaine de Kooning, Lee Kressner, some of these women that were intrinsically involved in the abstract expressionist movement in New York City. And it's fascinating. And I just read this one part about how she was looking at all this art of all these famous artists, right, who developed abstract expressionism. And she kind of says, and the common theme amongst all these abstract expressionism was mystery. And I was thinking to myself, what do you think is going to be the common theme of artwork from now? And it occurred to me, kind of what you're talking about, relatability, that it's going to be connection because we're all so separated. How do you create, going along this idea of relatability, how do you create connection in your work, do you think? That's a $1,000,000 question right there.
Right.
I want to know personally because that's what's on my mind right now. How do I make,
In two sentences or less.
give me a 30-second elevator pitch. Hit me.
Uh,
No, just joking.
Connection. Um, well, I think everybody has a story to tell, and everybody has pain and struggles that they have to overcome, and just being aware of that and touching on that, and not necessarily being an answer for all of it, but just letting people know that you're aware of it and just expressing that.
I think that's a really good answer, Benjamin. Everybody does have pain and everybody has a pain point and everybody has experiences. We go through life and we experience things. And I like that, just touching on it, but not having to like solve it. I think that's really good because it makes people relatable. Great answer. Thank you so much. All right. So we did art, we did product, we did presentation, we did educating. On to amplify. Let's get techie. How do you amplify? And maybe not even techie, because you were talking about your manila folders, the accordion folders. That was a great tip. Um, we're talking about being organized and really getting bigger. Amplifying is about how do you organize? Um, how do you scale? How do you get bigger? What tips or tricks or software do you use?
How do I amplify? I don't know. That's a good question. It's hard because the last 3 years I've kind of been scaling back because
Mm.
of my health concerns.
Well, that's okay. That's a way to go too. Flora Bowery talked about she had to scale back because she got too big. And so the way she did that was she's big into live painting. She does like yoga and workshops and live painting. So she bought a, a Wevo, which is a live camera. So how have you scaled back and organized more then? Do you know what I mean?
Um, Maybe.
You said you've needed to pull back a little bit. Okay.
Right. So I
So,
think I mean, I used to be very big in self-promotion and putting myself out there, and like I tell Cherish, making a lot of noise.
yeah.
But I really just have not done that in the last 3 years because I don't know. I can't I had to turn down a few jobs because there were deadlines I couldn't meet due to my health.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I just my scaling back is, I mean, it sounds kind of lazy maybe, but it's really not. I'm doing more with the art college and
Mhm.
just kind of doing less with my own personal career. And it's more about just not putting as much into it as I once did.
Well, maybe it's also about focusing on the things you like doing.
Yeah, that's true too. And yeah, and I think I guess for me, amplifying would be just trying to stay relevant.
Mm.
Even as I'm not gonna be necessarily be in the market as much as I used to right now, unless things change with my health, I do wanna still be relevant, so I'm still, like, going to the blogs, and I'm still researching what's trendy. I still will go to the bookstore every once in a while just to walk around and
Mhm.
see what's selling. So I guess that's part of my kind of, I guess, amplifying is just trying to stay relevant.
No, I think that's a great answer. It's one thing to make what we love, but that can take a lot of time if we're just making what we love. Maybe sometimes we have to focus on what is relevant, as you said, relatable and relevant. Um, I just got a note a couple weeks ago from my art agent. I sent him some work and he's like, "Nope, nah, tough love, nothing here I want. You need to be using colors that are from the current color trends." And he sent me a bunch of visuals. I was like, "Okay, take a deep breath. Let's make something relevant. Let's make something that he wants in the color palette he wants." And that can be hard.
Yeah, it is.
I like that. I like that you still go to the bookstore. What magazines and books are you in love with that you like to look at?
Well, oddly enough, um, whenever I go into Barnes and Noble, all the different publishers will like redo the classics.
Mhm.
So they'll redo. Um, I just saw. I don't know. Remember which publisher did it, but they redid the covers of all of Ernest Hemingway's books in this like really kind of deco-y
Mm.
graphic design, flat graphics. oranges and warm colors, and it was just absolutely fantastic. And when they redo Jane Austen or obviously Tolkien or whatever, I just love to see the different ways that they keep on updating. And then of course I'll walk to the children's book section and see some of the latest illustrations and books that are out there.
I think that's a great way to I think that's great advice. Don Mates was on the show. He is a really, really well-known book illustrator, cover illustrator, and he was talking about how when he first got into this, he would go to the bookstore and he was like, these covers suck. Nobody's doing covers. And so that's how he found his niche, was designing science fiction and fantasy covers and just walking the bookstore. And anybody can do that. Anybody can go to their local bookstore. Well, if they have a local bookstore, bookstores are dying, right?
No,
Oh, I
no
hate
reason to
that.
go to the bookstore.
Yes, go to the bookstore, guys. Now we have a used bookstore down the road from us. Oh, I love that place. 200,000 books.
Oh my goodness.
It's in an old boat warehouse. It's phenomenal.
Wow.
Great place. So you can get some idea of what old covers look like too. Because
Which are a
sometimes
lot
they
of
go
fun
that
too.
way, retro.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how you make old books new again, right? Update the cover, update the illustrations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Very cool.
I mean, I've even seen some people starting to update um, Mary Grand Prix's illustrations from the Harry Potter books. I mean, I guess
Mm.
Harry Potter is now considered a classic. Believe it or not, it's that been that long ago.
Well, actually, my oldest son just got these huge illustrated versions. They're like 11 by 13 or something, and they're illustrated. I don't know who by, but they really are gorgeous.
Mm,
Um, and so he loves them, and the detail work, the work, um, the illustration, the topography
yes.
in like the picture of Dagon's Alley. We were just looking at it last night, Dagon's Alley, and it's got perspective and it's got this topography work on the signs. And I literally was about to get out my lope. I was like, bring me my glasses because I gotta see what this says, because it's like super tiny.
Yep.
Do you think they paint a lot larger? Is that what you do when you do a book design? You paint bigger and then scale down for the book?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just easier that way.
Yeah.
Especially now that I don't want to admit it, but my eyes are starting to go.
It happens to all of us artists, I think.
Yeah.
It happens to everybody. You just hit a certain age and your eyes start to wear out. The human body is not meant to go for 1,000 years, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right. We did art, we did product, we did presentation, we did educating, we did amplifying. Let's move on to licensing and contracts. I know you just got a new agent.
Mhm.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's one way to scale back a little bit, is to delegate, huh?
Yes, it was such a blessing, and very pleased to be represented. And she liked a lot of my older work because I used to work very Rockwellian and detailed.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been a lot more kind of cartoony modern recently. But the fact that she responded well to that, I'm thinking I might go back to some of that and try to
Mm-hmm.
come up with some future works that kind of fall into that genre.
Mhm. Now, as an illustrator, particularly a storybook illustrator, how do you license your work with an agent? How do you create work for her? Are you giving her some of your older work, or are you giving her new work? Like, okay, let's just stop for a moment. I'll tell you guys, an art agent is somebody, this is for anybody who's not familiar with the genre. Art licensing is where you let somebody use your picture on a product, right? And an art agent is a specific person that goes out there and negotiates those contracts for you, right? So, how does that work for you as kind of a storyteller and an illustrator? How does working with an art agent work for you?
Yeah, and she's very she has a lot of connections with she does mostly fine art, so
Mhm.
high-end fine art. So there's wall art, there's puzzles, there's greeting cards. There's a lot of different places where that kind of fine art will fit very nicely. And so she has those connections. And so I had a lot of art that I mean, I used to create for my own self or public or produce for my own self products that we would sell at shows and events and stuff like that. And this is way back in the day. So I have a bunch of artwork from that. And we did pretty well, like cutting boards, those illustrated cutting boards. We did stuff, water bottles, I mean, anything you can imagine. And so we're no longer producing those products ourselves. It's kind of been on kind of retired, semi-retired, but then she saw the work is like, I think I can reuse this. And so,
Nice.
yeah. So, and I created a ton of work during that time for that exact purpose. And so now she's able to pick it up and do it. And of course, I also still need to keep producing as well. Because that was stuff I did in the early 2000s, of which, some of it's timeless and is evergreen, will last, for many generations and have a long-term appeal. But some of it does look slightly dated. So I, do need to look into creating some work that, and it's always a good idea just to keep producing as well.
Well, and staying relevant, as you said.
Yep.
I think that's really cool. So, producing your own product is one way to do things, and it certainly gives you more revenue, right? But it's a lot of work.
Oh, there's so much work and inventory. And then you think you have a great idea because you just love an image so much and you think everybody else will love it. And you produce a gazillion things and then it doesn't sell.
Yeah, and then you're stuck with it.
Yeah, and then it's in your basement forever. And then it becomes Christmas presents. And then
I love you, Mom. Here's a.
And then there's an image that you're like, I'm not so sure about this. And then everybody loves it. And then you have to go get reproductions made and more reproductions made. You can't keep up with the demand.
I'll tell you what, that always is what happens to me. Every single time I have an art show or I send work to my agent, I swear he picks the work that I'm like. Every time I have a gallery show, the pieces that sell are the ones that I'm like, oh, I don't know. Get it? What is with that?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I have a piece that I did a while back. It's called To the Tango, and it's some tango dancers and a jazz band in the background. I love it. It's my favorite piece, one of my favorite pieces I've ever done. I haven't sold anything with that image on it. Nothing. I'm just like, don't you guys see the brilliance of this piece?
Right? I've seen pieces like that. I've seen that theme, the tango dancers with the jazz in the background. That's a very marketable theme, I thought.
Maybe it's already been done too much. And maybe people are like, no, you should just stick to what you're good at.
And roosters and snowmen aren't.
Right. I don't know.
Well, it just goes to show, you've got to show your work. You've got to show it because you don't know what's going to hit. You never know. Like, I don't know if it's we, the artist, it's like we get attached to something. I don't know if it's an emotional attachment or like overtraining or over analysis where we're like, oh, this one is the one because I was referencing, this guy and this guy and this guy. I don't know.
That's where Instagram has been really helpful for me is, I'll post things and then some things I'll get 10, 15 likes. I'm like, well, that was a dud. And then I'll post something and I'll get close to 100 likes. And I'm like, oh, okay. So this is the one that people are responding to.
Oh, great tip. Yeah, that belongs under automation. So licensing and contracts. I know you're really, really new with your art agent, just a couple weeks in, right? What kind of tips or tricks would you give people about licensing work or negotiating contracts? That contract may be still fresh in your head. What are some things maybe you'd look for or advise to look for?
Well, number one, read the contract. We do have a contract lawyer that helps us, and that's good. But I think probably the one mistake is, whether it's in licensing or whether you're doing service work or whatever, the one mistake I see a lot of artists make is that they're afraid to go back to the hiring person and say, hey, let's make these changes. And a contract is basically, there shouldn't be any kind of weirdness or fear. Just get rid of all that. It really is, this is what I want out of it. And then you say, okay, well, this is what I want out of it. And somewhere through the process, you find a happy medium. And that's the whole point. And so many artists they just will sign it right off the bat because they're either too afraid to, or whatever the reason, to actually say, hey, let's, let's make some changes. Let's, talk about this a little bit.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to negotiate.
Yeah. Negotiate is the
Definitely.
big thing. Absolutely.
I mean,
And
don't be a diva,
no,
but
yeah,
definitely don't get taken advantage of.
right. And that's a great point. And of course, both parties are going to try to, make it more beneficial for them, and which is why the back and forth is so important.
Mhm. Mhm. I hear a lot about like exclusivity is a big one. It's particularly maybe if you're working with an art agent or something like that. Exclusivity being the idea that they're the only ones that can use this image. But there's so many variants of that. Before I got into art licensing, I didn't even realize that you could specify, okay, you can have this image for this country, North America, this continent, North America, or this product, pillows. So they might have exclusivity in one realm, one region, or one product, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, your art agent goes to certain products, right? So she's within a specific category. So I presume that your work, when you negotiated your contract, allows you to sell your work to other niches or like your own publishing.
Yeah, we do have, yeah, yeah, we do have a provision where um, I can do it for my own publishing and my own self-publishing, but she does have a lot of exclusivity over the work, and most of my work is, like I said, it's work that's already in existence, and I don't really have much of a problem with that. And we did change the language a little bit to allow me to still do service work
Hmm.
and to, provide temporary sub licenses for service purposes like book illustration and YouTube splash screens and what have you, and then still being able to license it on her end as well.
That's great. So you could reuse an image in different places. So you
Hmm.
do the work once and you sell it in multiple places, and now you've got more revenue coming in. Excellent. Excellent. So, Benjamin, how do you measure success? The last S that I put on this acronym appeals: art, product, presentation, educate, amplify, licensing, and S for success. I ended up adding that kind of last minute because I thought, you know, a lot of us artists, we have a lot of balls in the air juggling, and we finish one and we don't stop to celebrate. We don't stop to, we just keep juggling. How do you celebrate success and how do you measure it and define it? I mean, especially with your health issues and stuff, I think that's even more important. What would you tell people about celebrating their successes, sharing their successes, and just enjoying it?
Well, the number one recommendation, and I still have to listen to this myself, is to not compare yourself to other people. Because if we're comparing
Yes,
ourselves
yes.
to what other people are doing and accomplishing and achieving, there's always going to be someone ahead of you. And that, and if that is your measure, you're never going to add up, and it's just going to be depressing the whole way.
Mm,
So I think it's more important just to be more um, introspective and to just really examine, okay, this is what I've been able to accomplish. I think having end of year reviews over what was you've been able to achieve the previous year, how much of the goals that you set out from the beginning of the year that you were able to cross off, that's huge. I like making lists because I like crossing things off sometimes with really big black markers. Yeah, there's just a thrill in that. And I think that's part of that success is that, yeah, I crossed that off. And then when you look at, my case with my health hurdles, the obstacles that were in the way that, and I was still able to do this and I'm still able to do that. I think that's really huge in just being that measurement for what success is. And really success is it can be defined however we want to define it. And I think that's the other key.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be financial. It doesn't have to mean making $1 million, right? I
Yeah.
love your idea about your lists and crossing it off. I make a lot of bulleted lists too, but I don't think I've ever done an end of year review. Do you put your lists in a folder? Are they in a notebook? How do you do this end of year review?
I have a day planner. It's an
Hmm.
annual planner. So at the beginning of
Yeah.
the planner, I'll write down my goals for the year.
Uh-huh.
And then at the end of the year, I can go through everything that I had wrote at the beginning of the year and kind of go through it and see, some things I've crossed off 100%, some things I've made strides toward,
Hmm.
and then some things I didn't even touch. And maybe sometimes when I get to the end of the year, I look at the things I didn't touch. I'm like, well, that's because it wasn't really important, and it probably won't carry over into next year. And having that end of year is really good, just to kind of clean up your thinking and just help you prioritize what's important.
Do you do that kind of about now, after Christmas, but before New Year's, or do you do that earlier, or when do you do that? Do you have a set date?
I don't have a set day, and it's kind of a process. I'll work on it, a little bit here and there, usually once Christmas ends.
So you use a traditional planner.
Mhm.
Nice, nice. I do a little bit of bullet journaling, but I really like that idea of having your year goals. So you set up yearly goals and then like you do monthly goals and then weekly goals and daily goals, you said?
Sometimes.
Yeah, we artists sometimes.
Yeah, I'm trying to get better at that, at the monthly, weekly. I definitely do daily goals. I definitely do a daily to do. And it's often because I have clients that are like breathing down my neck. When's my project done? It's on my list. Don't worry. But yeah, I'm
Yeah,
trying to get more into like the monthly and the weekly. So that way I can have focuses throughout the entire month and focuses throughout the week.
I like that. Now I have kids, so I use more bullet journaling, so I don't have deadlines I necessarily have to hit for clients. So mine is more like my own to-dos, and with kids, as soon as you have a deadline, they're gonna get sick. So, be off school or there's gonna be a pandemic,
Hmm.
you know,
Minor things.
right, right. But I think that's great. Well, awesome. We've made it through the whole acronym: art, product, presentation, educate, amplify, success, licensing, and success. Um, where can people find your books and your work if they want to hire you?
If they want to hire me for anything, HummelIllustration.com is my website. And like I said, I have a form that people can fill out. They can also follow me on Instagram at Hummel Illustration. And if,
I'm going right now. I'm going to follow you
all
right now.
right. And if they go to Amazon and they type in the book area with the book tag, Benjamin Hummel, there is no other Benjamin Hummel doing books in Amazon right now, at least. So I'm the only one that will show up with that.
Benjamin Hummel. I'm getting your book too. So the folds and fabric. Watch this. Did you guys know that you can voice search? I love this. Benjamin Hummel folds and fabric. Is it folds and fabric?
It's called It's a Wrap.
It's a wrap.
It might, I know we have folds and fabric in the keywords, but I don't know how the voice recognition will pick that up.
Found it.
All right.
I want that one, guys. So follow Benjamin on Instagram. Buy his book on Amazon. I've added it to my cart. I'm following you on Instagram. And if you want to hire him to do chalk art or a commission piece, check out his website. Well, thank you so much for being on the Artist Appeals. I so appreciate it.
And I appreciate you inviting me. Thank you.
Excellent. I'm going to hit stop. Hold on one second. Stop. Bye, guys.